So now we're going to do a couple of little demos that are sort of fun. Here I've got Simon Ritter and Angela Caicedo. They work in Sun's evangelism team, which is a kind of an unusual group of people because they're engineers, but they're engineers with social skills, which is unusual. Which one would think is like an empty set. But their day job is to go around the world, giving sort of demos to people, and they kind of get into cobbling strange things together. So Simon, why don't you tell us what you've been doing?
Okay, thank you, James. What I've got here is the remote control from a Nintendo Wii, and the reason I've got that is because I saw a video on YouTube that was created by Johnny Chung Lee, who was at Carnegie Mellon University. And he looked at the way that the Nintendo remote control worked and figured out that you could do some interesting things with it. And so I thought, well, let's take that kind of idea and apply Java and JavaFX to it and see if we can do some similar kind of things. And the important thing about this particular remote control, or the remote control that we're using, is that it has an infrared camera on the front. And this is what you use when you're controlling a game to select things or whatever, in order to point it at the screen and then be able to move the mouse cursor around on the screen. Because the infrared camera can track the position of up to 4 points of infrared light. And so you have this thing called a sensor bar, which is not a sensor bar, which has infrared LEDs in it that you can then use to track the position of the remote control. So what we've done is to actually turn this around and mount it next to a projector so that you can track an object which has infrared LEDs on it and then do some interesting things with it. So what I've got here is my homemade screen. And as you can see, it looks homemade. It's got some interesting sort of woodwork in there. And I firmly believe that any good computer science project should involve woodwork. And as you can see from Angela's creation there, she's also taken up woodwork as part of her project as well.
Right. So this really is like a passive slab of wood with some LEDs around the corner.
That's correct, yes. So what we do then is we take the remote control, and that talks Bluetooth to the normal controller. So we've used the JSR82 API in order to get the Bluetooth signals into the laptop. We've then used a free API which is called Wii Remote J, which takes those signals and then figures out which sensors are being reported, what values are being reported, and so on. And then we've written some Java code which takes that, processes the information, and passes it on to a JavaFX application, which then binds the information about the position of the points of infrared light, the rotation of the screen, the size of the screen, and so on, and does the appropriate transformations to an image in order to project it onto the screen. So hopefully what's going to happen is if I hold the screen here, and we can see that, yeah, okay, if I turn the screen on, you'll see a playing card appears. And what I can then do is I can move this around on the screen and I can rotate it and the image will track where I am on the screen. Now, one of the things I've done is I've actually mounted 4 infrared LEDs on the screen, but not at each corner. So I've actually used a specific pattern in order to enable me to not only track the position of the screen, but also to know which side of the screen is being presented. So if I turn the screen over, we get the back of the playing card. And similarly, I can move that around and manipulate that as well. And the other thing we can do, of course, is that because we can see which side of the card is being displayed, we can also do some magic tricks. So I can change the card to a different card if I want, and I can, let's see, I shake it around, I move it around, there we go, and I can get the card to change by doing that. So that's the first demo that I just wanted to show you. I then thought about it, and I thought to myself, well, is there a practical application for this? Because that's not really a very practical application.
But it's a lot of fun.
It is a lot of fun. I really struggled with this, and the only practical application that I could come up with was the idea of having an hourglass. So you could actually turn it over, and the sand will then pour through the hourglass, and you can just turn it over. Well, okay, go back again. Yeah, there we go. And so that was just a sort of practical application. And then finally, I wanted to demonstrate that you're not restricted to just a flat type of screen. So what we can do is we can actually use a different type of screen. In this case, I've got an umbrella, and hopefully, what we'll see is an image of the world. And then what I can do is I can rotate that, I can move that towards the screen, I can move it back and forth, and we'll actually sort of track the position of it as I move the umbrella around. There we go, just going off the edge there. And so that was the idea of showing how Java could be used with JavaFX in order to track different screens and the infrared light and so on.
Right. So the Sun marketing guys, they like to talk about, you know, the three screens of your life, or maybe the fourth screen of your life, and it's not like it's a countable number. The screens of your life can be arbitrarily absurd.
Exactly. That was the idea that really inspired it. It was like for all the screens of your life, even the ones you don't know about yet.
Yeah. So Angela, you actually did something kind of fun and maybe even plausibly useful out of this.
Actually, yeah. So since I saw the movie Minority Report, I kind of got into this, how to create an interactive interfaces out of almost anything, right? So first I used the sunspots. That was my first attempt. And then with this Wii Remote, we've been working on ideas of what to build about how to create interactive applications. So one of the things I always thought about was kids. So I have a 1-year-old daughter, and I know when she's going to start drawing, she's not going to use the whiteboard that I gave her. She's going to take a crayon and use the walls in my house. That's for sure. So this particular application will be very useful for her. What I'm doing right here, again, I'm using the Wii Remote. It's behind the glass, and I have a glove that actually I made it myself. Very, very simple. It's just have one infrared LED, so it's able to track my hand. So if I come here, I have the whiteboard to draw, and I can actually go ahead and start drawing with my fingers.
So this is a build-it-yourself, arbitrarily large touch screen, because you didn't. I mean, that's not a touch screen. That's just a piece of frosted glass.
Exactly. And yesterday, for example, we have our BAF where we actually discussed the technical part of these demos. And I didn't want to move the glass because I broke already once. I didn't want to risk it, so I just use a wall in the room. So you can basically project on any particular surface and just use the glove to manipulate, so create a touch screen out of nothing.
You just project the image on the wall,
and that's
hit
pretty
the
much
calibration
it.
Points with
yeah, have your kid drawing everywhere, doing a mess, and just turn it off the application, and that's it. So a few things that so everything, all the interface is created on JavaFX. So for example, I try to make it as clean as possible, but you can actually get the tools as you want it. So if you want to change the color, you just get the palette. Again, very nice effect with JavaFX. You have the ripple that give you an idea where you're touching, because it's really kind of hard to know where you are. So you can pick the color and just go again and start drawing. And anytime you can clean the screen, that's also very useful. Let's go back to different colors. And then you can also manipulate how big you want the lines, so you can make it thicker, so it's easier for you to actually visualize what I'm drawing here. You can actually also mix colors, so you can get a palette, like you're really painting. So I can get the color purple, for example, and you can mix it with white, and you just use the palette for doing the combination of the two colors. In JavaFX, this is just an intersection of two shapes that you created. So it's actually pretty simple to do in JavaFX. And again, you just now have your new color. And then finally, let me clean one more time. Okay, let's get rid of this. Let's clean up a little bit. And let me pick the blue color. Blue is kind of nice color. And now let's draw a big tube. One of the things that I love about JavaFX, among many things, is how you can actually animate. Let me just try to do something longer. Animate your components very, very easily. So what I'm doing is I'm actually kind of creating a tube, and then I'm going to have an object and being animated. So for example, I can get a bowl, and it can just be animated through the path I just created. And unfortunately, the path finished, so kind of the bowl drops and goes away.
So this is one of my favorite sort of examples of hammer technology, right? You take something, you hammer it apart, you get little bits and pieces, you put them together again in surprising ways. And this is like really dirtball technology in many ways. The result is just surprisingly cool and a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I imagine that a lot of people in this room are going to go to the nearest hardware store and buy a sheet of frosted glass. All right. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Simon. Thanks a lot, Angela. All right. Up next, I'd like to call up Tor Norby, who demo stud from the Tools Group. And, So Tor, you've been spending a lot of the last, 6-8 months working on this designer tool that the people have seen like little bits and pieces over the last week. But we wanted to spend a good chunk of time, and get something of a deep dive from the guy who actually knows what he's doing.
Yeah. So I wanted to show 3 or 4 key features that we have built into the tool. First thing is keyframing. So I'm going to have some graphics. Let me import a JavaFX logo. So just drag it onto the canvas. And so to keyframe, what we have to do is start recording. So I press the record button, and then I place the object where I want it to begin. So I'm going to put it in the off-screen area over here. And then I drag the current time slider to about 2 seconds where I want the next keyframe. And I drag the object in. And I rotate it the way I want it. And we're going to use the guidelines to place it sort of right there. So now I can drag the slider back and forth, and you can see the system is interpolating. And we can add another keyframe, let's say right in the middle. So if you look carefully, when I drag it here, you see little dots in the timeline view. Those are where all the keyframes are. So now, if I drag it again, you'll see the object is sort of taking the path into the middle keyframe and out to the end keyframe.
So it kind of made it sort of bounce off the bottom.
Right.
Pretty easily.
Yes. So you can do keyframing not just for positions and rotation, but any kind of variable in the system. So opacity, audio volume and balance, translucency, anything.
Right. So for all of you who have written JavaFX code, what's going on behind here is it's actually writing, the keyframe codes, all the rest of that to create the objects, bring in the assets.
Yeah, and this was a very linear interpolation. Obviously, you want to get more control and do an arbitrary curve, maybe a gravity or ease in, ease out, that kind of thing. So the next thing I want to show are the new JavaFX controls. So here's the controls palette. We have lots of controls, even charts. I'm going to drag a button onto the stage here. And I'm going to copy it and make a few copies for myself. So this looks kind of familiar, right? This is like the swing buttons. But unlike swing, you can set effects on these guys. So I'm going to add a drop shadow on this button and a motion blur. Maybe not very practical, but looks kind of cool on this button. I can even group these guys and add... Ooh. We have a bug. You didn't see that, did you? All right.
Well, I didn't, but they did.
All right. I'm going to add some buttons back here. So, did I mention we're not shipping yet?
Yeah.
Shipping later this year. So now I have some buttons, and I want to use these to control some media. So let me import a video file. We have a speed racer clip somewhere. There we go. So I'm going to place it right there. And I'm going to push it to the back so we can see the JavaFX logo. So you can do the layout you want with the effects and everything. We can also add behaviors in the tool, obviously with scripting, but also we have something called visual wiring to make it really simple to do the kind of binding that JavaFX supports. So the first thing I'm going to do is enter the wiring mode. And when I drag from this button over the video, you can see this menu shows up. Those are all the slots that are compatible with this button source. So I can connect this button to play. I can connect this other button to toggle play.
Right. So these are actually turning into JavaFX binds. This isn't like a special API just for the tool. In some sense, the special API for the tool is FX.
Yeah, what we just did now, we edited script slots to actually execute button handlers. After this, I'll show you value binding. So let's just first test this. So there's no edit, compile, debug here. Well, maybe debug, but there's no compilation because this code is always just running in the tool. We have live editing. So all I have to do is switch to the play cursor or just hold the Alt key, and I can actually click these buttons to execute the scripts that we just wrote. So when I do that, you can see the video plays. So that's sort of event slot hookup. We can also do real value binding. So if I drag the slider onto the stage here, and let me line it up. So you can see we have visual guidelines to help us get this looking right. Now I can take the slider and I can bind its value to the current time of the media clip. And I also need to bind the maximum value of the slider to the duration of the video clip. And now if I play this again, you can see the slider moves. Right? So that's value binding, and there's nothing particular about media for this. You could do this any kind of more complicated combination of these things.
And in this case, it's bidirectional, right?
Yes. So if I add for example, a checkbox here, I can bind any two slots. So if I hold the shift key here, I can bind, for example, the strong property of this button, which is like an armed state. I can bind that to, let's say, and that's a Boolean slot. Now I see all the target Boolean states that this target object is exposing. So I'm going to hook it up to the selected state of the checkbox. Now if I click this checkbox, you can see the armed state of the new control animates into blue, which is what the new controls do. And so that's, a Boolean value. Let's do a numeric value. I can bind the opacity of the video clip to the slider value over here. And we also need to set the max property. So now you can see the video disappeared because it has, 0 opacity. If I drag the slider, you can see I'm controlling the opacity of that arbitrary other variable. So that's visual binding.
It's amazing what you can do with a little introspection in the scene graph.
Yes, absolutely. And so that was binding in the FX platform. Obviously, you can also write scripts to do more complicated behavior, but this gets you part of the way to sort of just getting things talking together. So the last thing I want to show, I'm going to drag in another graphic. This is the JavaFX multi-screen story, right? This is the slide that shows you that FX runs on all these devices, desktop, mobile, and so forth. Let me push it to the back so we can see the rest of our design. So I can actually go and add a new screen to this project. So I'm going to add a pretty small screen over here. So what we've done here, you'll notice that in the master scene here, the graphic doesn't quite fit. We're showing it translucent to see. This is outside the visible area. Remember how we put the animation off screen so we can animate it in? In this phone, we have a slightly different aspect ratio, so you can see the graphic actually fits. So now we've created this new application and the new screen that this application works with. And the reason we let you do that is now you can go and tweak this. So I can say that, well, on this device, I want the video to be much larger. Oh, not rotate, resize.
Right. So in the Java world, we work really hard to make sure that write once, run anywhere works. But there are some things you have to tweak. You just have to deal with, like the screens are different sizes, the buttons are different. So here you're able to say, okay, the version of this app that's going to deploy on that machine should do this.
Yes. You want to be able to do visual tweaks. So I made the video bigger on this thing, and I can, for example, say, well, on this tall, and notice, by the way, for a tall screen, we just rotate it so it looks nice in landscape portrait conversion. Maybe on this one, I don't want the play button, so I can just delete it. I can make tweaks. Notice that any kind of tweak, the resizing over in this screen, deleting over here, didn't affect the master design. But most importantly, I can go in and I can keep editing the application, and everything stays in sync. So let me add a play pause button to this video. So notice how this play pause button showed up in all the other screens. Obviously, I've tweaked the size of this video, so I probably want to move it over here. And if I now go in the master design and I wire this play pause button to the video, I can go over in this other screen here and I can play it, and you'll see that things still work. Right? So I'm able to tweak visually, yet continue working with the application. In the old days, you would have your applet code and your mobile code. That's not necessary here.
Right, and you can manage to integrate the whole developer experience throughout the whole tool chain and the delivery out to the end.
Exactly.
And given how interesting these things are getting with, and it's not just phones anymore.
Yeah, hopefully later this year there'll be in this menu there'll be a TV item where you can go and target certain TVs as well for your screens.
Yeah, and that LG screen that's for sale in Korea, but
yeah, I volunteered to beta test that one.
Yeah, I'll beta test that one any day. And it's just amazing the kind of stuff that people are going to be able to do with FX, with this tool. Once you're happy with it enough to be able to let somebody else try it, and I'm sure looking forward to being an alpha tester.
All right, we can arrange that.
Yeah. All right, thanks a lot, Thor. That was wonderful. That was really wonderful. All right. Yeah, I know. I mean, once this guy is stable enough that you can play with it, you're going to have a lot of fun with it. So now I'd like to move on to a completely different universe here, and I'd like to call off Fridtjof Engelhartsten from Telenor. Ah, there you are. All right. Hi. So you do stuff that involves wires.
Yeah, and SIM cards. So the thing here is that 3 billion SIM cards are distributed every year by the mobile network operators. And this application that we put in the SIM cards can work across many different mobile phones and terminals. So the SIM card platform is very interesting for the mobile operators. Now the thing here is that next generation SIM cards will have Java Card 3. And with multi-threading, with servlet engine, and will basically be a TCP/IP connected network node.
Right. So people are going to be writing a lot more advanced applications in this new generation of SIM cards.
Sure. And we also see that we can have sensors directly embedded inside the SIM cards. So we can have motion sensors, we can have a Wi-Fi radio directly inside the SIM card.
Right.
So the idea basically with this PlaySIM platform is that we want to have a platform where every developer can help us and find out what we can do with next generation SIM cards. So the idea is basically that you take your own SIM card, you insert it into the PlaySIM board, and then you take the PlaySIM board and add it on top on the Sunspot platform. And what that basically enables us is to have a Sunspot that acts as a SIM card. So we can basically put Java Card 3 applications on the Sunspot, and they have access to motion sensing, they have access to wireless networking, and we are basically able to experiment with SIM cards that can communicate directly.
Right, and this is with SIM cards that are actually live in a phone as opposed to just emulators of SIM cards.
Sure.
And you get to use all the debugging facilities that come with the Sunspot. I mean, people in general have not been able to set breakpoints in live SIM cards, and with this, they can.
Yeah, and it also opens the SIM cards to normal developers. You don't have to be a mobile network operator to play with this. You can just take your own SIM card, and your own SIM card will be used for the authentication toward the mobile network. And the rest of the applications are resided in the Java Card 3 environment on the Sunspots.
So it's kind of hard to see a SIM card doing something, but you guys actually put something together here.
Yeah, so what we basically have here is that we have added the PlaySIM board on top of the Sunspot platform, and we have a SIM card inserted into the PlaySIM board, and we have connected it to a normal Sony Ericsson phone. So let us see if we can get this to work.
Right. So you've got another cell phone here with another SIM card, and so these are two phones that are going to talk to each other, not using the phone side of things, but using the SIM card.
Sure. So here I have a Sunspot connected to another phone, and now you can see we're on the AT&T network, and we are actually talking to the Sunspot, and the Sunspot has allowed us access to the AT&T network. Now I can take this other Sunspot, and I can actually see if I can trigger using the accelerometer inside this Sunspot, I can trigger a menu on this phone. So let us see if we can get some action on the screen here. Which is actually triggered directly from this sunspot. There is a short delay here because there is a lot of communication going back and forth here. So now it said motion detected.
Right.
Which basically triggered from this device wirelessly. So here we have a platform where we can basically experiment with SIM card embedded sensors. And you can basically, as the Sunspot platform is an extensible platform, we can put on add-on board with different features. So we can, for instance, put on an add-on board with GPS, and then we have a GPS-enabled SIM card.
Yeah, so the kind of things that people are going to be able to do inside the SIM cards is getting really, really interesting. They're becoming much more debuggable, much more approachable, and this is something that nobody's ever been able to do before. I mean, setting a breakpoint not just in the cell phone, which we've been able to do for a few years, but in the SIM card on the cell phone.
Sure, and all the communication between the SIM card and the terminal goes via the Sunspot. So as a developer on the Sunspot, you have completely control of the communication between the SIM card and the mobile phone. And you can basically have full freedom to play around.
All right. Well, thank you very much. That is very cool. I know a lot of SIM card developers are going to be very happy with that.